On that story, let me bring in Mr. Jason Androha. He is a political commentator who joins us via Skype out of Ontario to share with us his views on that matter. Jason, please.
Well, I think it's very interesting that these rioters, these so-called protesters, have continually insisted that the main that pardon me that the Hong Kong government is not a democracy. If that was true, then why have a record number of people gone to the polls in order to vote? I think that this election is going to give us some kind of a barometer. It's going to give us, depending on the candidates who win, what the actual general mood of the people of Hong Kong are. If they vote for anti-mainland people, then that would certainly be reflective of the general attitude of the people in Hong Kong. However, this record number of people going to the polls certainly contradicts the claim that the Hong Kong administration is not a democracy. If that really were the case, and they really did believe that, and that's what we're led to believe, that the population of Hong Kong doesn't believe the government is a democracy, then why would they be going out to vote for these candidates, depending, of course, who wins? I believe the last time I checked was 30% of those eligible to vote had done so, and the previous election in, I believe it was 2015, was 47% of the polls have not closed yet. I think several sources inside the country say that they're on track to pass the number of people, or the percentage of the voting population that have gone to the polls, beating out the previous ones, which would certainly reflect an enthusiasm and a desire by the people of Hong Kong to participate in these kinds of elections. Now, of course, this doesn't really tell us absolutely everything, because there's been some violence against people who were known to be going to vote for what they call pro-mainland candidates. So the police are out there trying to protect the polling stations from being attacked, and the reason they're there is because the threat, it certainly does exist. I mean, we've seen for how many months now that the population of Hong Kong has been terrorized by these people for simply disagreeing with them on a claim that they make, which the actions of the public seem to contradict. I mean, there's reports of people having thrown acid in their faces for speaking Mandarin, which is the mainland language. Is this a peaceful protest? Joshua Wong, the leader of the protests, went on the BBC, attempted to defend his movement from what was essentially a friendly interview, one that was sided with him. Yet he simply couldn't justify the violent actions of many of the protesters, including the cleaning out of the university, which had discovered a laboratory building. I think it was, I believe, 8,000 bombs were confiscated. And yet during that entire interview, at no point could he ever acknowledge that it happened, or even justify their use or deny their use, for that matter. So I think that this election is very much going to tell us a lot. The voter turnout would contradict the claim that China is that Hong Kong is a dictatorship. I mean, dictatorships don't hold elections, and sometimes when they do, people don't show up because they don't believe in them. But the trend thus far has certainly been to demonstrate the opposite.
And regardless of the results of the elections, Jason, I want you to walk us through what may be some reactions to the results once the elections are finished.
I think it's perfectly predictable what's going to happen if people who are generally pro-mainland or allied to the mainland, the international community, and we understand this to be the imperialist Western states, will simply denounce the elections as frauds without citing any evidence whatsoever. A few of them may even claim that the police officers that are sent to protect the actual polling stations are an attempt to intimidate anybody who would vote against them. Again, making an accusation without any evidence whatsoever. If by some chance there are a lot of anti-mainland candidates elected, they'll probably hail this as a great step forward, celebrate the fact that it happened, but then turn around and claim China is or at least Hong Kong, is not a democracy. Well, nothing says something is not a democracy like voting for people that were antagonistic towards that very establishment. This kind of contradict their claims. So I think that regardless of how this election turns out, it's going to be a situation where there's going to be having their cake and eating it too by not just the rioters inside of Hong Kong, but many of the people influencing them in the imperialist community.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Jason Unruh, political commentator via Skype out of Ontario.